Don't forget to give a thumbs up and provide a comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. For those that have been following my videos, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. You'll remember that last week I had a Maple Burl, and I cut this piece off. I'm going to save this smaller piece. I may be able to do just a small platter with it. Now it's small. It's going to be 6 inches in diameter. Not round. It's got some rot in it a little bit, but I think some interesting features as well. There's some bark inclusion down here. It was from a burl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the lathe and see what I can turn with it. I'm going to leave a natural edge. I think you'll see that some of these features will turn out quite nice in the end. This here will be my bottom. I'm going to leave it completely flat bottom. So something that I haven't done yet on the video series is I'm going to mount this in my chuck, but what you'll see is I glued a waste block onto the bottom of the bowl, and that's going to be mounted in my chuck, and then I'll turn it from there, and then I'll cut this off at the end. So this is a waste block that's been hot glue melt, onto the bottom of the bowl, and that works fine. I've done that a number of times. I wouldn't want to turn a 100-pound turning with just being hot melt glue on there. You'll see it here. I put a fillet all the way around, but there's also glue underneath the surface, so covering the whole surface. Again, I wouldn't want to turn something very heavy with that, but something small and light like this, it's fine. There shouldn't be any issue. I will still just put my tailstock up against it until I get the outside round, and then we'll remove the tailstock. So as I mentioned, I've got it mounted in my lathe. And I've got my tailstock up against it here, just to put a little bit of pressure on it this way so that it doesn't want to come out this way. In order for it to come off the lathe, it's got to go this way first. So by having this up against it, acts as a stop, and it's got a tiny bit of pressure. Because it's not flat there, I couldn't put a lot of pressure on it, but it's enough to hold it. And it actually turns fairly smooth. Not a lot of vibration, so I'm not too concerned about it. I'll show you here. It's turning fairly smoothly, so it shouldn't be a problem. So I'll go ahead and start just getting it round on the outside. Again, it won't be perfectly round because there are these voids, but that's going to be part of the natural beauty of it when it's done. So I'll go ahead and get started. You want to keep your tool rest as close to the working surface that you can, and I had a little too far out there. The reason you want to keep it close is you don't want it to have an opportunity to do this, which would be very, very bad. So you may have noticed that I switched tools. At first I was using my carbide tool, which tends to scrape, but I've got some end grain here, which is a little soft too, and it's giving me a little bit of tear out. I switched to my bowl gouge. The bowl gouge allows me to come this way and push this way and cut going in this direction, which supports the fibers better. It should give me a bit smoother surface. But again, as I mentioned in previous videos, sometimes it's a bit of trial and error to see which tool works best on the wood. It is giving me a better surface, like I mentioned, and I can tell that by the shavings are coming off are a little bit bigger than they were before, so that's a good sign. I'm thinking I'm getting pretty close to where I want for final diameter. Again, kind of make it interesting, but you see this piece is missing here, and here you can see where I've got this that indicates the outer diameter, and then this is falling away. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to take a little bit more off at the top here, and then I think that outer diameter will be established. What I did there is I just brought the tool across the bottom to level the bottom up, certainly reduce the amount of sanding that I have to do. I stopped short of the glue filled line. I don't want to interfere with the glue. I want the glue to remain there until I'm done, but at least this part of the bottom of the bowl is now flat. I think I'm going to leave these the maximum height there, and I think I'm just going to start cutting out the middle and see what I end up with. Go too big in diameter because I'm going to lose this. So what I may actually do is I may actually, instead of bringing the bowl in this way, apologies for this, I may actually make it a bit inverted so that I can maintain some more of this area here, because I think that really adds to the feature. If I just took it out to this diameter, you can see if it was out to here, all of this would, well, can't see with my hand there, but if I were to bring it out, the rim out to this diameter, then all of this would disappear. So the rim at the top has to be smaller than the rim at the bottom. I may take there, I think I'm happy with the outside of the bowl now. Again, I want to maintain this and maintain this. So in order to do that, I'll have to keep the diameter where it is. So now I will just work the inside, and the shape of the bowl from the inside will be this way. There, that fixed that up and did a good job at removing that in-grain tear out. So in-grain tear out is because all the fibers are in the tree are sticking up this way. When you go across them with a knife, it tends to fray them. So I have the outside sanded now to 600 grit, and the inside is sanded as well. Just point a few things out. Hopefully you can see this on the camera. I won't know till I'm editing, but as I thinned the inside out in here, I ended up creating a window here, but I think it makes for a nice design feature just the same. This, I was able to maintain the majority of this, even though as I got thin on the inside. So again, the inside of the bowl is it's an inverse bowl. It's widest at the bottom and narrowest at the top. So think of it as an upside down bowl. But again, that's just happened to be what fit the shape of the bowl the best. So I'm going to go ahead, and the inside is just sanded to 60 grit. I'm going to take that down to 600 grit, and then apply the sanding sealer and then the finish. Now, I have had some people question me on sanding. How can I sand something that has a hole in it? You can see here. And it's got a rough edge. You can't, because you sand very fast. So basically at a high speed, you don't even feel that hole as it passes around, or very little. The other thing is, a couple other tricks. On my sanding pad, I tend to put a sponge, which gives you a little bit more flexibility so it absorbs, as opposed to putting a hard surface up against it. And also, sometimes you're better off using your fingers, just because, for example, I've got a tight radius right here. the sponge just won't get in there. So sometimes you do have to use your fingers. And again, contrary to what you think, you want to turn it fast so that you don't feel those holes. The other thing is I tend to sand on this side of the bowl. Typically when you're cutting, you want to sand on this side because when you have your tool rest in place, you want your tool to rest on the tool rest. But when you're sanding, the tool rest is away. And if you put on this side, if you were to catch your finger, you don't want it to be pulled down. You want to be sanding over here. So basically, what happens when that hole goes around, you get pushed out as opposed to pulled in, if that makes sense. So it's actually, you feel less of the irregularities, and it's a lot safer to sand on this side of the bowl so that the rotation is away from you as opposed to this side of the bowl over here where the rotation is into you, if that makes sense. I'll just go ahead and show you now that even though I've got a hole right here, I can sand that edge. And again, my fingers are the best tool at this point because it's a very tight radius and nothing else will bend in there other than my fingers. That did a pretty good job. This surface here, the very outside, is a little difficult to sand by hand just because you will feel, when you've got a irregular surface that's on the flat, you will feel that a little bit more. Plus, if you look here, that's a little more than just irregular. If I touch those two spaces, I'd be touching nowhere else. No, from here to here, I wouldn't touch anywhere else, and from here to here, I wouldn't touch anywhere else. So that very top rim lip is probably the most difficult to sand. So one thing too I haven't discussed here, but because of the shape of this and the roughness of it, I did talk about the fact I can sand it at a high speed, but no matter what speed I go at, it seems to just rip paper towel apart, and which is usually what I apply my finish with. So in this case, I did rub it with some denatured alcohol, and I'm just putting some sanding sealer on it now to raise the grain, and then I will sand it one more time. And then I'm going to put a spray lacquer on it because, again, I can't put a friction finish on it to try and rub this. There'd be no way. I'd never even touch this surface, for example, where it's low here. So there's no way I could put a friction finish on it. So I'll put a spray lacquer on it, and that'll give me the best option for the finish on this one. The bowl is finished. All I need to do now, if you remember, I glued a waste block on the bottom of the bowl. So now I'm just going to go ahead and part that off. And then once I'm done that, like I said, the bowl will be finished. I'll need to sand by hand. I'll need to sand the bottom by hand or on my belt sander. So for this part, I'm going to not go all the way through with my parting tool. I'll go most of the way, and then I'll finish it with a handsaw so that it doesn't go flying off the lathe. Apologize, that's not easy to see. Well, there is always a risk of having a catch when you're doing that, so I'm going to finish it up with a saw. If I have a catch the way it's spinning like that, and where it's just glued on, especially with a finished bowl, I don't want it coming off the lathe. There you go. I was able to saw through most of the way, and the glue pulled off fairly easily. As you can see, I'll just take this over to the belt sander, finish the bottom of it, and this bowl will be done. So I have a new engraving logo, thanks to a friend of mine, Daryl, thank you very much, who has a CNC machine. So I got the logo engraved on a piece of brass. So here I am just heating it up in a torch. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to heat it up enough in order to do the engraving. And yeah, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So there you go. I'll just sand that down a bit and we'll be ready to put some finish on it. So there you have it. Pretty pleased with the way it turned out. You can see the features that here from the burl that were left on the side and around on this side as well. You can also see that this side has a hole in it, but it has a nice feature here. So the bowl itself is an inverse bowl, so it's smaller at the top than it is at the bottom. It's about 7 inches in diameter and 3 inches high, and you can see all the way around the live edge. You can see all the features there, especially here. You really have a profiled rim on it. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out. It's got a nice gloss. And you can see, again, thank you to Daryl, but oops, upside down. You can see my logo on the bottom of the bowl that's been burnt in. So overall, I think it's turned out fairly well, fairly pleased. Let me know, provide some feedback, some comments, let me know what you think. But yeah, we'll call this bowl finished. Thank you for watching.